Hello and welcome back to what I wished I'd known about self-publishing before I got started. My name is Karlie with Dragon Key Press, and this is more real talk, and I figured you guys might want to have a little idea of how the whole getting paid aspect actually kind of works, especially with all of these print-on-demand things out there, like KDP, Ingram, and so forth. And even in the book industry, they're, traditional, there's actually going to be a delay in any pay you get. It doesn't matter whether it's traditional, KDP, Ingram, Smashwords, Drafted Digital, there will be a delay in getting paid anything that isn't an advance. As a self-published author, you do not get advances, which sucks, but it also means that you don't end up having to pay all of the extra stuff to everybody else to get everything else done. So the only thing that you're technically paying for is a distribution fee, depending on the version and the cost of the actual publication. If it's an ebook, it's just the distribution fee of whatever site, etc., that you're using to distribute through. If it is a physical copy, it's the cost of printing and a small fee on behalf of whichever distribution channels you are using. If they're expanded distributions, they will take a larger cut, which is why when you look at the KDP little board when you're setting up your book, it shows you different percentages of what your royalty earnings will be. But even with all of those differences, it still gives you a pretty good chunk of change when all is said and done. Now, in regards to actually getting paid, it's all wonderful and good when you see the reports, yay, you sold a book, woohoo! But guess what? You're not getting that money for 90 days. And that's pretty much standard all the way around. And some of them do that, especially Ingram, because people can return books, and they will charge you for the returned books. You basically will have that taken out of any royalties that they may owe you, the price of the book that it costs them, plus distribution fees and all that. So they kind of keep a hold of that in case they need to reimburse themselves from anything that is returned. You can, of course, say you don't want it to be returnable, but if you're going to be doing any kind of wholesale, they highly recommend you actually do enable some kind of return. But just know that's part of the reason Ingram Sparks probably does that. But in general, even if you do some of the other print-on-demand or ebook services, chances are good you're not going to get any of the money from the sales for at least 90 days, and in some cases, even longer depending on how big your sales are. Some ebook distribution sites don't send you the royalties for the earnings unless they reach a certain threshold. For some, it's like $5, $10. It just depends entirely on which service it is you're using. So make sure that you look up those details so you know when you're going to get paid. And some of them will pay you via PayPal, some of them will direct deposit it into your account. Smashwords does PayPal, or at least they do with me. I don't know if they've added other options since I set things up, but KDP, Ingram Sparks, they will pay you through your bank account, which means you have to have all that information. And if you have an account that is separate for your books and you've done all the legal stuff of doing business as, business licenses, blah, 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 etc., then you're set and sorted. Otherwise, just use your personal account and hope and pray that eventually you can do separate accounts, because as we learned in the last video about taxes, it's better to keep business and personal stuff separate. But all that aside, just keep in mind, even if you do make sales now, the only way you are actually going to get immediate cash flow from those sales is if you sell in person. And that means that you are the person actually selling them without any third parties involved. If you get into one of those programs, like the grocery store program that I think I've mentioned previously, Texas has, And you can get in to sell your books at grocery stores. They actually will ring up your book at the register, and then you will not get any of that money back for 60 days because it runs through their system. They compare it to how many sales they have, etc., and then they make a check out to you and then send it in the mail. There might be other services like that in different states. I'm not sure. I just know about the Texas one because I ran into some authors who were doing it and asked them about it. So if you see authors in stores doing things like that, by all means ask them what and how it works for them. There are some stores that you can get into, used bookstores and other bookstores, pending on how nice the owners are, that may allow you to actually sell them in person without going through their register system. But just know that if you are selling any books through somebody else's system, chances are good you will not see that money for at least 30 days. The exception to that might be at a book conference in their little bookstore, because they like to kind of get that taken care of at the end of things and divvy out who gets how much based off of whatever sales they make then. Just know that in general, if you're doing an in-person event in a grocery store and you are having your sales through their actual registers, you will probably not see the actual money from that for at least a month, possibly up to 3. If you're expecting to get paid through Ingram or KDP or similar, you probably won't see any of that money for 90 days. And just know that you also have to keep in track of all of those in-person sales as well, because you still have to report them to the IRS, even if those are in person. So, if you did wonder about how the whole getting paid thing works, I hope that gave you some idea, answered maybe some questions. If it didn't, by all means, let me know in the comments so that I can address them in a future video. Because I wanted to keep this one short and sweet, comparatively, and just kind of give you an idea of the general of how it works. And I hope I did so. All that aside, I am Karlie with Dragon Key Press. Hope you learned something useful, and I hope to see you in the next video, whatever that may be.